Remind me what city Civic is based out of again?
Civic's based out of Melbourne, but I live in Sydney currently, working out of Sydney at the moment. But yeah,
Okay.
we're
Is it difficult? Because I know one of my favourite Australian bands, King Parrot, has just had to separate with their guitar, their drummer because he's in Brisbane and the rest of them are in Melbourne. I'm wondering, like, has that divide? Is it weird? How do you manage being split between two cities?
no, it's fine. I mean, for now I'm here, but that's just there's circumstances which brought me here. But yeah, it's you just got to navigate it and like stay in touch and make sure that when it's time to jam and stuff, I can get down there. The boys are still jamming, obviously weekly, but I get a bit of a holiday some weeks. But I get down there when I can. Look, we've only been doing it for the last kind of 6 months, and it's worked out for us. So yeah, it's easy.
Okay. So, I understand that your recent album was recorded at Mona. Now,
Yeah.
I was not aware that there was a recording studio or anything like that. What can you tell me about that?
So we didn't know. I didn't know that there was a recording studio there either. Kieran J. Callan, our producer, he was like, okay, you know, it was between Mac DeMarco's farm or Mona in Tassie, right? And we were like, okay, let's go down there. And I actually didn't want to see any photos of the studio or anything. I just trusted Kieran. I was like, this is, he was like, it's amazing, it's beautiful, blah blah. And so we got down there, and it was like this crazy studio. Like, I mean, I've only ever been into a couple anyway, but it was like, this studio basically in the side of a mountain overlooking like the water and like, crazy instruments, and it was insane. It was actually insane. And like, yeah, apparently only a few bands have recorded in there so far, and we were actually one of the first like rock bands or punk bands, I guess, to record something in there. So that was quite special.
Wow. I'll never forget the look on my face must have been fantastic the first time I went into Mona. As someone who grew up in Tassie, we were
Yeah,
just nobody saw this coming. When this place
yeah,
first opened well over
yeah.
10 years ago now, we were walking through it and I was like, this place feels like a Bond villain lair. Like this.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. It's a pretty amazing space. Like some of the art in there is insane, like it's beautiful.
And now you can say that you recorded an album in a building that has in probably the only building in the world that has its own bowel.
Exactly right. Yeah, for sure.
You gave Mona the shits. What can I say? Civic gives Mona the shits.
There you go. Headline.
Mate, looking back over, I guess Australian music has had many different flavors over the years, many different periods. What would you say is your favorite era of Australian music and why?
Oh God.
Yeah.
Um, my favorite era of Australian music. Do you know about this scene called murder punk? Do you know about this?
No, it sounds amazing.
So it's basically like it was this kind of like subculture, underground culture that like it was like they were punks, but it was like they called it murder punk, and it was this kind of specific sound. Um, and there was a few bands like that came out of Frankston, where I'm from, that had this sound. Like there was a band called the Chosen Few, and they were like, I don't know, it's just this specific kind of sound, and it's super raw, it's mad. Um, that's the kind of like obviously the like the culty kind of undergroundy sound is my favorite. But what else? I mean, like there's some bad ones though, isn't there? There's some bad eras. But I mean, look, I've always been a fan of obviously the '70s kind of stuff, and like I'll always just love that because my dad got me into it. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
colored balls and all that kind of sharpie stuff. Like I loved all that stuff. In my like late teens, that stuff really made a lot of sense to me.
Mm.
Um, but I think like we're in an interesting time at the moment with like Australian music. I think there's so many different genres and so many like people championing like just such a diverse sound coming out of Australia, and like the world is looking at Australia at the moment, I think, and
Mhm.
being, oh wow, these guys are actually like, there's some cool shit coming out of here, and that's super special and important.
It is interesting because I feel like I don't know. I remember when I was growing up, obviously it was the 90s boom. Yeah, the alternative music boom in the 90s. So I remember, our biggest musical exports were bands like Silverchair and all that kind of stuff. And now I'm wondering who they are now. I mean, Amel and the Sniffers are doing fantastic business.
Yeah.
Yeah, who are the ones that you see as doing really good work for Australia at the moment?
In terms of bands wise, I mean,
Mm,
like it's funny though, right? Because it's like there's a question of like success, or like is it a question of who's successful or who's doing good things for Australian music? Because I think that
mm,
they're two very different conversations, right? I mean, not to say that, you know, I think that look, I think that uh, somebody like, for instance, my friend Grace Cummings, right? I think she's like one of the best singer-songwriters coming out of this country for sure. Um, and then you've got bigger bands like, I don't know, like Skeggs, for instance. They're like doing the whole like, skater rock kind of thing, and like
mm.
they do massive shows overseas. Um, and then you've got like kind of cooler like underground bands like Dust from like Newcastle. Like I think they're a fantastic band, and I personally think that they're going to get really big. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's an interesting conversation, isn't it? Whether when you talk about like, you know, the success measure, whether
Mm.
they're doing like, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And well, it's like answering like, oh, what do you think is the heaviest thing you've ever heard, or what do you think is the most success? There are so many different ways to answer that question. I mean, yeah, if you want to be like, oh, who's Australia's most successful band? Well, you probably say AC/DC. But
Yeah.
I feel like that's almost irrelevant because they were such a big thing, but it was that was 70s and stuff. I now look at it and I think, holy crap, Parkway Drive are one of our
Um,
biggest musical exports, and they're a fucking metal band. Like, who
yeah.
saw that one coming?
Yeah, but also in terms of like, if we talk about, okay, like the influence that like what they've done for Australian music, or who's, it's like, man, Parkway Drive, like, come on, like, what they did for like that scene around the world was huge.
Mm,
Like, AC/DC, yeah, they were successful and this and that. And like, I know that they did cop, there was still a lot of people that, weren't down for it, but like,
mm,
like look at like, I don't know, and I know I bring this band up all the time, but I'm going to again, but it's like, look at like the Saints, you know what I mean? Like
mm.
they weren't that massive, but like, look what they did for music, you know what I mean? And I know that, they weren't all from, like, weren't born here, but I'm just saying, like, they're an Australian band, you know what I mean? But I don't
Well,
know.
sorry, what the funny thing about that? It's funny that you mentioned the Saints. I had an
Yeah.
interview with Ed Kepper,
Okay.
and I didn't grow up with the Saints music, so
Yeah.
when they started doing those recent Saints shows, I knew I wasn't the best person to ask, so I was trying to get all my musician friends of that era to do it. Like I asked Kelly from Scream Feeder, I asked Ben Eli from Regurgitator. I was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
do you want to interview Ed Kepper?" And they're all like, "Are you fucking kidding? No, I wouldn't dare."
That's so fun.
And
Yeah.
I interviewed him, and he was great. He was lovely.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, I think that answers the question. I think, yeah, it's just a funny one, isn't it? And like, even this idea of like, we talk about this idea of like success and what that means, and like, how you measure it. How do you measure success? Like people might
Mm,
go, oh, do you find do you think you guys are you successful? It's like, man, we get to like travel the world with my best mates, drinking, eating food, playing to hundreds of people in San Sebastian who are singing my lyrics. Like that sounds pretty successful to me. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like, or is success measured by like buying a house or a car, or like, you know, is it a product of like what comes from you making music? Is that how you measure success? I don't know. But for me,
Hmm.
killing it. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like the concept of the one-hit wonder, and it's amazing how you'll hear people bandy that term around like it's an insult, and then you realize, well, hang on, of all the millions of bands that have ever existed, and that tiny percentage that got signed, and that tiny percentage that went further and further and further, and then that tiny percentage that maybe made one song that
Yeah.
resonated with people. Holy
Oh yeah.
fuck, that is 1,000 times further than most people are ever going to get. So if you're a one-hit wonder,
Yeah.
mm,
100%. And I think that like that's the that's the funny thing as well, isn't it? It's about like, we talk about like, it's like, why do you start music in the first place? It's like, I wouldn't say that we ever started Civic because we were going to try and like write the best record ever, or like write a one hit wonder, or even like have a fucking influence on like anyone. It was like we did it because we felt the need to do it, and we were like, let's do this thing. You know what I mean? And um, yeah, I don't know. It's just like you have an urge to make fucking good music, and like we don't want it to die, right? Like it's music's so important. It's just so many people. And
it's
yeah, beautiful thing.
and it's almost a good thing. Like the collapse of the record industry, as much as it sucked that people weren't able to, feasibly make a living out of music, any,
Yeah,
in the way that they used to. It the unintended good side effect of that was that it got rid of, I think, a lot of people who only went into it because they wanted to be famous, because they wanted to be rock star. Now, like, you have to do this for the love of it because there's no money.
but also it's like I don't think, and I've said this for years, like there's no shame in like working a day job and like being in a band and making like if you can make it like there's this people it goes back to what we are saying. It's like, oh, it's like you're only taken seriously if you like live off it or something. But it's just like as well, just as you're in it, you've seen it, and we've all seen it. It's like fucking hard to make money off this thing, and it's like if you get the money, cool, great, like well done. But like I don't have any shame in like going to work top of being a musician, like whatever, like
Yeah.
we're workers at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, and even if you do make money from music, at the end of the day, what does everyone say? They always say that it ends up just becoming a job anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like, so yeah. Anyway,
I
that's
feel like the people who I reckon are in the best position for what you were talking about, that, like, people who are professionals and who do music on the side are duos, like bands like Astrodeath and people like that, where it's literally just a guitarist and a drummer, and they're like, "Hey, you want to go on tour?" That's now just two people that you have to get leave in. You have to put their leave in, and
100%.
vroom.
And it's like, these people, like, look at Sleaford Mods, right? Like, they rock up to a festival, they're getting fucking good cash. They rock up with a laptop, man. Like, plug in, play the song, get off stage. They don't need roadies, they don't need gear, they don't need fucking nothing. It's like, you know, it's like, that's all good and well. But it's just like, I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's an interesting one, isn't it? Like so many people have slandered the music industry recently, and it's all coming apart at the seams. Like everyone's realizing, oh, this thing is actually fucked, and it needs a revamp and a reboot. And I think that is a good thing. I really do. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Because and that's not even from a monetary point of view. Like obviously, people should be paid for like it'd be great, but I
mm.
also understand like as we were talking about, there's millions and millions of bands and blah blah blah. It's like not everyone can expect to like get money from it, and not everyone can expect to make a living from it. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
so. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. So one of the tracks on the new on Chrome Dip that blew my mind was "Fragrant Rice." What inspired that?
Yeah, well, that was like that was this song that Lewis kind of he had the riff, and it sounds like, do you know the Wipers?
No, I don't.
It's just like he was like wrote this song and we were like, fuck, it sounds so much like the Wipers. And then we had this ideas where we were like, we're going to make it sound like a chant, because there was this whole like, I don't know, response to the being in the space and being around all this modern and ancient art, where it almost felt a bit um like pagan or something. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And some of the songs were sounding quite pagan, and I think we had this imagery in our head, and we were kind of just talking about it and going down this crazy rabbit hole. And then I was like, well, like maybe there should be this chanting instead of singing. Maybe it's going to be like a bunch of us, sort of almost like a spell or something. And because I already had the lyrics written. Anyway, then Kieran was just like, we were playing around with some vocal ideas, and then like he got me to that spot where it was like almost like this kind of like, I don't know, it's this fucking, I would never traditionally sing like that, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And we got to that spot, and I was like, we were all just like, that's fucking done. Like, we don't need to add any more on top of that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, just wanted it to be a bit of the kind of like the wild card on the album. Maybe it is the wild card, maybe another song is, but for me, that was a bit of a wild one.
Nice. Mate, this is awesome. Thank you very much for your time today, dude.
Yep.
I'm glad that we finally managed to make it work. So, easy, dude. Look, well done on the album, and
Thanks.
it sounds amazing. And yeah, man, I'll see you around the traps. I'll see you when you come through Brisbane.
Thanks, brother. You have a good day.